they were pretty fussy about it. The aviation department at that point was run through the state police. I still remember the state police about once a year come in here, usually fly in, check out what we were doing, check the airstrip and everything. We had 300 or 1,300 feet with this Piper Clipper, 4-foot. It ran from about where Dennis's shop used to be, where the foundry is there, down along the fence to the road. That's what we flew out of. I could take 3 people out. I usually didn't try to take 4 out with that. But that's how this started. And then we did that several years. I did get Vernon Good and George Steffi. Vernon Good was a sprayer pilot. He's no longer living. But we got their names put on the strip so they could legally keep their planes here. And we had a hangar we built out there. We actually built it, my dad had built it to process green tomatoes. There was a friend of his that used to raise tomato plants, and he processed green tomatoes. They would pick them green here and ship them south at a certain time of the year during the summer. And of course, in the wintertime, while they raised them down in Florida, ship them up here. So a lot of the tomatoes you get in the store or something, pick green. And they would get maybe 2 tractor trailers a day out of there. And that's why we built that one hangar. We use that about 2 months out of the year. And the rest of the time we could use the hangar. And put our own gas tank in there. And when they were grading around the building, they somehow ran across the vent line to the tank. I think it was a 1,000-gallon tank that we put 80 octane fuel in. Hurricane Hazel went through. Had a neighbor, cousin of mine, Joe Smucker. He wanted to go up and look at some of the damage. So he come up, and I put gas in both tanks. Kind of a mistake. I didn't know the vent was broke or anything. Took off here, headed downwind. Man, it started coughing and spitting and sputtering. I'm like, boy, this isn't good. So I just kept it going about half downwind, and then I pulled the throttle back a little and it just quit. Well, I came in and landed. Someone asked Joe if he was scared. Not till I saw the look on Mel's face. I said, that's not true. I said, I wasn't that scared. At that age, things like that didn't bother me too much. But we just went from that, and then a little later on in the 80s, Mike Coon, who some of you know, a lot of you probably know, he wanted to start a flight school here. So that's when we got the commercial, or what they call public use license. For that, we had to have a minimum of 2,200 feet, which we stretched it out. And Pop was good about that. And we built a hangar or so. And Mike was a hard worker and really started a flight school. He started Aerotech, which is at Lancaster now. And he also started a charter business, Aztec. We flew that out of here, out of the grass. He even went to Aerostars. We flew some Aerostars out of the grass. People raised their eyebrows when you tell them that. But because the Aerostar is pretty slick, it's pretty fast. And so then, with him doing the charter work and everything, we applied to the state for some funds to build a runway, a blacktop. In 1990, we built this runway. At that point, it was 2,400 feet. Came to the property line. This property was then owned by an Army guy. I bought it later on. But the state, they had a fund. Their money comes from taxes, aircraft fuel taxes. the public tax, aircraft fuel taxes. So we applied for that, and that runway was over $500,000. So I had to pay 25%, and they paid 75%. I didn't really have any money. I bought the place from my dad several years prior to that, and what happened, he held the mortgage. I paid his mortgage payments at 7%. The accountants weren't sure they would, the government would go along at that time. At that point, interest was 10 and 12%. But anyhow, I got it from my dad at 7%, and he gave me a clear title to the farm. Well, with the clear title, I could go to the bank and get money. They were glad to loan it to me. You know, if it didn't work, they would take the farm from me. So I had to be very careful. When I build a hangar, and when I get that hangar full, I put it on a 15-year mortgage for the hangar, full mortgage. And then when I get that hangar full, it would hold about 10, 12 guys, planes. And then I would get a list on my hangar list of 20 people maybe, or whatever, people who wanted hangars. And when I got that many, then I'd go to the bank again, build another hangar, remortgage everything for another 15 years. I think I did that 3 or 4 times. So I got all those hangar built. But I was very fortunate. I always kept them full, and I had them, you know, people were there, good renters. I'm trying to think what I first charged for those hangars. It was around $150 maybe a month. And so that's kind of how what things grew here. When I turned it over to Marlin here about 12 years ago, I was thinking of building this hangar, the one like it. And I was going to build about an 8-unit hangar because obviously of cost. And so I asked him whether he's interested in putting any money in the hangar. Yeah, he might be. He said, well, how about if I buy half the airport? He said, I'll let you retain 51%. He said, you'll have to say it over what I say. We talked that back and forth a little. I talked to my accountant and my attorney, and he did the same. And then after a while, we decided, you know what? Just be a lot cleaner if I just sell them the whole works. So before I sold it to him, we were talking about this hangar. He said, well, let's build that hangar. If you got people doing it, you know. So we built this hangar. It was at least $450,000. And after it was built, I mean, we had many agreements on the airport or anything, nothing written. He said, you know, you could tell me to go take a hike now, and he said, you'd have a hangar free. And there wouldn't be a thing I could do about it. I said, I know that, but I said, you know me better than that. Well, he said, yeah, that's why I did. So, that's kind of the story of that. This property that this hangar is on, I bought originally, my grandpa had like 15 acres. Next to him was a Brookmeyer farm, about another 15 acres. Below that was 20 acres that my aunt owned. She had a dairy farm on the south side of the old Philly. So my grandfather bought the next 15 acres. My dad bought the 20 acres. And then I bought this 6 acres up here. Paid more for the 6 acres than what they paid for the whole thing. But anyhow, and the state helped me out with that. I pretty near got into a bind with it. He wanted $175,000 for this 6 acres. And the state said, well, we'll give you 3/4, we have money. That's our deal. I said, well, man, for that, I can't turn it down. So we went to settle for it, and here the Amishman had put a restriction on that I couldn't extend the runway on. And I said, that's no good to me, you know? And, well, this real estate agent said, well, let me talk to him. That was $175,000. He come back the next day, he said, they'll take a restriction off if you give them $230. I said, that's next to insulting me. I said, tell him I don't want it. So, he went back and told him I didn't want it. And then I called the state representative, and he said, man, you left that go. I said, hey, you know, he said, don't worry about it. He said, do you know who bought it? I said, yeah, my next door neighbor. And he said, could you buy it from him? I said, well, probably could. But he said, our money's still there. He said, I think you should buy that. So Harold Rule had put a bid in at $150,000 instead of $175,000. He had the greenhouse up here where she sits. That was the Rule family. So I went to see Harold, and I said, Harold, I understand you bought some property. He grinned a little bit and he said, yeah, not sure what I really want with it. I said, well, do you want to sell it? Yeah, I'll sell it. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you what I offered him. Yeah, I'll sell it to you for that. And he thought a little and grinned a little, and this was just a couple days before we took the transaction. He said, do you have the cash to buy it? I said, well, the bank's gonna back me on it. Well, he said, I'm supposed to settle on Friday. And I said, I don't have the money to settle. And I said, well, who's your attorney? He told me, same attorney that I use. So we talked to him. So to make a long story short, Friday, he went in and bought the place with the money from my bank, with my money. And then Monday, turned it over to me. It made himself $25,000 just signed a couple papers. But at least I got the ground. So I was happy about that.
And which piece of, you said 6 acres?
Yeah,
So
6 acres.
Yeah, but where was that now? From what?
Right where you're sitting.
Into where?
Well, to the west line here, and down to the cottages, and up about the east side of this hangar, there was a line from,
Okay.
property line came up across.
Okay.
There was a story with that too. Excuse me.
Is that why there's the display threshold up here?
No, the height of the road.
Is that it?
The height of the road. That's another thing. When they built that road, they got a lot of dirt off of this farm to fill that in. Contractor went bankrupt. My dad never got paid for it. So I said, maybe I ought to go up there and get my ground back and take the construction away.
Display threshold.
Yeah, but that's why, yeah, 15 foot above that road and 20 to 1 slope. But anyhow, when I bought this, or when I bought this, my dad said, you know, person that used to own the front, I shouldn't mention his name, doesn't matter, but anyhow. He had told him one time, he said, if you're ever interested in selling any of that property, he said, I'd be interested. He had the plant farm. And so Harold needed some money one time. I think he wanted to go on tour somewhere or something. And he sold it to P.L. Roars down here in the front. Yeah. A couple years later, he needed some more money, and he came to my dad and said, are you interested in buying the back? And my dad said, you remember I told you I wanted to buy that? You know, I remember. My dad said, well, you didn't sell the front to me, I don't want the back either. My dad said, don't ever do that. He said, that won't get you anywhere. Because he told me that story when later on I went to buy this, so they had sold it to the Amishman, Christie's Oak. That's kind of the story of stuff here. I am working on a book that'll be out, I was hoping a year ago. But maybe in another couple of months. We're working on getting it printed. That has pretty much the complete history of the airport, some of my family history. I grew up with, there were 6 of us boys and 1 girl. And after I had started the airport here and I was looking about buying it, and I wanted to include any of my brothers that were interested. Well, my older brother bought the front half, the greenhouses and everything. He was interested in that and I was interested in the back. And I talked to a couple of my younger brothers and whether they wanted to go into partnership with me. And the one brother said, Mel, I got 1 payment left on my house. I am not going in debt or borrowing any money anymore. So he said, be my guest. Another brother said, and I don't think he minded if I say this, it was Dave that has the Glick fire equipment down there that are doing very well. He was starting that business in the hangar here. I rented him some space. He said, Mel, he said, the last time I talked to my banker, he looked at me and he said, now just how much do you think your house is worth? He was borrowing money against his house. So he said, I need to hear, I can't go any deeper. So they said, go for it. So I went for it on my own, which was good. It turned out fine. And there were 6 of us boys, we always got along fine. And that was my dad. There was nothing that would have hurt him more than if we had had a squabble, which we didn't have. I had 1 sister. That's kind of the family story.
Did any of the brothers fly?
Excuse me?
Did any of the other brothers fly?
Yeah. My older brother Norm had a private license. My next younger brother, Johnny and Jake was police chief here for 25 years ago. They were just about ready for their private ticket. And we had the Clipper, and they were using that out of New Holland. And my dad was a little short, needed some money to buy a new truck for the plant farm. And we weren't flying a whole lot. Most of us had gotten married and had children to worry about. So we sold the Clipper for $1,800, what we had paid for it 5 or 6 years earlier. And then my brother Dave, he came along a little later, has the fire equipment. He learned to fly. He got his instrument rating. He had a Mooney for a while for the business. And then he gave that up about 10 years, 10, 15 years ago, when his business just took all his energy and time. And he said, I can't do everything. That business has been very successful. He's got about 120 employees now. And he has 4 stations like we have down here. He has 1 in Zelienople, 1 in State College area, and 1 in Hatfield. He sells a lot of stuff out there. He's retired, of course. I'm not sure how you do that. But,
Was the airport your primary business, or did you do something else in
no. I had to use other things to support myself. When I started the airport. I was a mechanic by trade. I worked in Lincoln Mercury as a mechanic for a few years. I worked for Hartman Lapp as a boat mechanic, mostly on the engines. I had worked for Ski-Craft building boats for a couple of years. They were an intercourse. They built a beautiful mahogany boat. And then I My dad had an appliance business, Maytag, Norwich, and Amana. And when he got to where he couldn't handle it anymore, he said to me, Mel, are you interested in that? I'll back you. So I went in the appliance business. While I was that, I built that laundromat that's down there. So the laundromat, and then I had the water business, the bulk water. We fill swimming pools. We have a well here that puts out 500-gallon a minute plus. And so I actually lived off of the laundromat and the water business while I was building the airport. The first 15 years, I didn't live off the airport, that's for sure. My wife was very concerned about it. She used to come to me and she'd say, Mel, what are we gonna do when we get to retirement age, get older? We have no 401s, we have no savings, nothing. I said, look out the window, it's out there. And so that's, when Marlon bought it, and I got my things, got all my mortgages paid, boy did that feel good. And he was very good to me. Salary for being here. So, small, but it helps a lot. Earlier I talked about the old Lancaster Airport. They figured you were the only one old enough to know about it.
Yeah, I flew out of there when I was about 14.
Jess Jones. Well, Roland Carter was my instructor. Yeah. Were you there for Roland Carter? Well, you
I
had
didn't
to
know
be.
anybody there.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
I mean, I got to the airport by walking.
Okay, so you lived close.
I lived pretty close by,
Yeah.
but I got to see the mail drop.
The mail drops, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when I was a real young kid, they would pick up the mail and head back, I guess, for Codesville or something.
Yeah, well, there was, I don't know if you guys are aware of it or not, but there's a light system for night flying, Beacon. Down here at Intercourse, it's called Beacon Hill. There was a beacon on that hill, and they had several of them between Philly and Harrisburg. And at night, you could follow those as for navigation. In fact, the one light that I have there on the paint hanger was one of those lights. It wasn't one of these, but it was a beacon off of one of those mail routes. I got that from State College. I was at a meeting, an state aircraft meeting. We were sitting at a table talking, and this guy from the from the airport there was across the table from me and talking. He said, you know, he said, we got a new beacon, and he said, I don't know what to do with the old one. He said, I need to sell it, get rid of it. This is my gift. So, I said to him, I'd be interested. He said, well, come look at it. So I went up, and he had taken it off of the building. It was sitting there, framework and everything. And I said, man, it's a monster. 3-foot diameter, 1,000-watt bulb. I said, well, I don't know. I said, how much do you want for it? $1. I said, you need $100? No, $1. Load it up and get it out of here. That's how I got that beacon up there. That beacon shines in the neighbor's windows and they don't like it. That's why it's turned off. Any questions?
Did I miss the story, or don't you want to disclose the time you lost your license? And
Oh. Yeah, well, I was going to New Holland. They were having ground school. And even after I had my license, I just enjoyed going through the private ground school again, kind of refresher course. And there was always somebody there that needed a little help. I'd help them out. And I had a Mercury. I liked my V8 cars that had some oomph. And so I came home from New Holland one night, and I still lived down here just before I got married. And there was nothing on the road, so Well, I spend a lot of time coming home, you know. And, we pulled in the garage, and I was out closing the garage, and I heard this Chevy going up through there, boy, flat out up through Smoketown. Must have been doing 75 or 80 mile an hour. Those old six-cylinder Chevys, 50s, didn't go very fast. They got the V8s. So sure enough, I got a phone call. State cop apparently had been pulled out of the road there at dinner course somewhere. And when I went through town, I'd been doing 50, 55, and he took my license number. I didn't even know he was gonna try and chase me. I mean, I come up through here and put my car away, and he couldn't follow me. But he had gotten my license number. So anyhow, make a long story short, I got married soon after that. And I moved up, it's Prospect Gardens, an old brick house about where Faith EC Church is. And in the process, those days it took 6 months, almost a year sometimes. They took my license for 30 days, I guess, 15 or 30 days. So I could ride a bike, or I could get my dad to pick me up. I was looking at the plant farm, or the clipper was here, and there was a field back of my house. So that's how I went to work a few days. I kept it light, didn't have much gas in it, you know. I went across the corner there, I don't know, probably 800-900 feet there. I guess the neighbors saw it, it's probably nuts. At least I enjoyed it. Yeah.
What'd you have to do for permitting to build a hangar?
Right now, the big thing is water runoff. Township, state regulated, but through the township. We've got a couple of big basins down there now, and we're gonna have to enlarge the one, I guess, if we put a hangar. We are looking at putting a hangar back of this hangar here. Right now, I have 20 people on the waiting list. I don't know where they all come from, but 5 years ago, I had a couple empty hangars. Now everybody seems to want a hangar. So, really, the problem is the cost of building them. It's gonna be an expensive hangar. So, right now, we're kind of doing some surveys. My son-in-law, who's sharing the manager thing with me, is taking over for me, actually. He's gonna be sending some letters out people that are on the waiting list, see what they'd be willing to pay for a hangar, to see whether it makes sense to build it or not. But, it'll cost more than double what it costs to build this one. It's just unbelievable what's happened. It's just kind of the way it is. Yeah, the water runoff is a big thing. This fortunately was zoned industrial. So now it's zoned industrial airport. So the township was good to me, and that protects anybody from building anything too high off the end, or like the motels here. That motel was they were looking at building a 3 or 4 story building there out toward the old Philly. They would have entered it from the back here. That was just 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I haven't heard anything lately. That must have fallen through. But, they couldn't build anything high like that where the cottages are because of the slope. So the township has been good to us in that way. They protect us. And, but the water runoff and catch basins, that's a pain. You could spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 just on a study. And that's all overhead. So I didn't have that when I built the first hangar. Any other questions?
Ever check into getting the instrument purchase?
Yeah, the thing they don't like, we don't have enough of room. They want
It's on the sides?
They want 250 foot in the center of the runway, each side completely clear. So you make your instrument approach into Lancaster and scud run over here. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Lancaster's close enough, so,
You come in 3-1 the very top of your own.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah,
So the airport owns right to the driveway here?
yeah.
How did the electrical company get back in that corner? Did you see that done?
Oh, yeah.
When they put the big,
That was Rule's property.
oh,
That was Rule's property, and then they sold the back half off to a guy by the name of Mel Horst. And then he owned that property. I think he sold off to the electric company and also to Marty Barr, this garage here. So that was a Rule property. That was where the sheet is. That was greenhouses there. So this has changed a lot in the last 20 years.
What is the permitted height of a hangar, that you guys would look at building?
As long as you're 7 to 1 off the side, as long as you don't infringe on that. Side is 7 to 1, the end is straight out at so many degrees, 20 to 1.
Oh, okay.
So, that's the restrictions. The 1D hangar that's over there now, actually, we got an exception, I mean, that was built before the runway and stuff. So, we got a waiver for that, 'cause that would actually come into that.
So it's basically grandfathered.
Huh?
It's basically grandfathered in.
Yeah. Well, should have told you before I started that half my lies aren't true.
Speaking of lies, I was wondering, I apologize for being a half hour late. I was wondering if you already went over this airmail pickup spot.
Yeah.
Oh, you went over it already? Oh,
Lancaster, yeah.
Yeah, I seen them, my dad took me out to Coastal Airport, and we seen the Stinson Reliant, and every day he would fly over. They didn't go IFR, they weren't allowed to, they didn't do, when they got to a mountain, I don't know how they did it, but they flew from here to Pittsburgh, and they were all VFR. And, he'd go over every day. I remember as a little kid, I'd see it going over every day.
We fly roads, maybe.
Yeah.
They say they came back with branches and wheel carriers.
Well, my brother landed at DWI one time with a little bit of alfalfa hanging in the bottom of the flipper. We said, Tower looked out at that and he said, "Where's this guy from?" Yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Any more questions? I'd be glad to answer them. I just want to say I'm glad to see the EAA getting revived here. Great. I think it's great.
Well, we appreciate all you've done for us, Mel.
Well, we tried, but, yeah, I think it's great.
You've been
None of
very
them know my
generous.
stories from when I started, except Jack. I turned 90 in December.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a milestone.
Some days I feel it, some days, but I did quit flying about 4 years ago. Sold my airplanes and stuff. I could have continued, but I had no real reason to. So on my 90th birthday, I got in 172 here with an instructor. I went up and shot 3 landings. Come right back, you know. Didn't have a problem. Well, I guess in 91 I might do the same thing now.
Do you have an idea, Mel, how many tours you took?
Oh my. No, I started the tour business for the airport, flying tours. I have no idea how many. It wasn't unusual to do 2 or 3 in a day. No, not every day, but weekends especially. And I did a lot of aerial photo work. I had a couple professional photographers that used me. So I got quite a few hours of that. The one especially did a lot of commercial buildings and stuff. But that in the last couple of years for photographers with the cameras and stuff they have now, you know, that it's not as much business for them as it was. And the drones and things like that. Yeah, the airport, that's the rentals and the fuel business. I put that fuel farm in, that was probably, 88 or 89. And the state gave me money, 75% of that. And I'm lucky there, or lucky, fortunate, whatever you wanna call it. At that point, we were still using some 80 octane. So I put the two tanks, two separate units, one for 100 and one for 80. Well, a few years after that, 80 was no more. So we used 100 until just, year and a half, 2 years ago. I get that 94 UL from Indiana, from Swift. Just got loaded today. When I loaded in, that's about $40,000.
So the flight school, what's that about?
Oh, they use a lot of, yeah, the 94 octane is lead free, and especially for the helicopters where they run them on a dead load all the time, they were having a lot of lead build up on the plugs and the valve guides. So they really like it. And I got Rotax guys like it, of course. So I have quite a few outside people come in. It's actually, if you use it for auto fuel, it's they say it's a 98 octane. But for aircraft, they consider 94.
And it comes from Indiana?
Comes from Indiana.
No wonder it costs
Lafayette,
so-
Indiana. Huh?
No wonder it costs so much.
Yeah, it's great. Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Swift fuel. You read any magazines, you see that.
Does your 100 octane come from Indiana too?
No, that's, they have different places. Quite a bit of it comes from Albany. Some of it's picked up in Jersey. It's shipped into those distribution points from the Gulf Coast. That's where it's refined.
How often do you have to fill the tanks?
Well, we'd like to be there pretty often, but, we use, round numbers, maybe 1,000 gallons of fuel a week, sometimes 1,500. Depends a little on the weather and the flight school. The 94 octane and the 100 octane run about neck and neck. So, so we sell a good amount of fuel. That also helps to support the airport. We try to keep our prices reasonable so people can afford to fly. I always wanted to keep everything reasonable so people could afford to fly. People like me that really couldn't afford it. Wanted to.
Thank you.
So,
We appreciate it.
Yes.
okay. Any other questions? I hope I didn't bore you.
You were great, Bill.
Get that book finished by,
Yeah, you have to let us know.
it'll tell you everything I told you.
What's the book called?
Excuse me?
What's the book